Fanning, welcome to Play Fearless.
Thanks. How you going?
I'm going well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Real good, yeah.
Out for a surf this morning?
Got a quick one, yep, in between dropping little fella off to school and being here.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I really appreciate it. Not least of the fact that you've had a busy time recently. We're going to go all back through your career and that, but I always like start present day. And I think I'd be right in saying front of mind for you right now is the golf day that you've just done, and we were just chatting a little bit before we hit record about that. But biggest charity golf day in Australia.
Yeah. Don't know how. I barely even play golf, but yeah, it was massive success again. Raising money for the people affected from the 2022 Northern Rivers floods. We put it on just to try and help raise a bit more money, and as we've sort of learnt about more people, build more relationships, we've just seen more and more people that still need help, not only financially, but in the mental health world as well. It's sort of like hitting the pinnacle right now of people really getting affected, and they're on the verge of going one way or another. So luckily we've got some good groups that are still out there and fighting the good fight.
Yeah, and I mean, I recall, I'm sure, seeing on the news you were during the floods. You were going around in your boat helping people out, and then this is just a continued. Do you see this golf day as something that is going to be required or desired ongoing? Like, for someone who doesn't live up in this region, like, can you give me a sense of what it's actually like? What's the toll and the ongoing ripple effect of what's been happening?
Yeah, so we're going into the third winter now, since the floods, and I met a family last year. They've had a baby since the floods, and that baby has never had a home. Yeah, well, like, to hear stuff like that, there's more people that do not have walls on their houses. They, like, you can see from the front door to the back door the whole way through, and so that's sort of like the generalization. But then there's towns, place like Woodburn only just got their service station back, right? Just in the last few months. Still don't have a supermarket, so they're having to spend more money to try and go and get groceries and stuff, on fuel. And so there's still a lot of people out there that need help, and probably the biggest one is kids displaced from their schools. Normally for a kid, it's their safe place is home or school, and to have neither of those, it's really taken a toll on those young kids.
And so for you, like you said, you're not much of a golfer, so talk to me a little bit about because I'm always interested in the type of people who just go, because you don't have to do it, but you can, or where did it come from? You're sitting around and you're going, I want to do something, want to help. Just the germ of that idea, where did it come from?
It was like being on the front line and being part of a community that went and helped. And you start building relationships with these people, and you really start caring for them as friends. And it was sort of, I was just driving down the highway actually, and I was like, how do I make more money? Like, how can I raise more money without just doing just a fundraiser or a GoFundMe or something like that? And so I rang my mate Paul Gow, and I was like, hey, how hard is it to run a golf day? And he's like, if you've got 6 to 12 months. I was like, can we do it in 3? And he's like, oh God. And from there, we got a couple of crew that work with us on it full time. Matt Owens Chuppers, who's the chief operating officer, he's done an incredible job, and everyone just bought into, all right, we're here to help, and what we can do. Not, obviously we want to make a lot of money to give back to these people, but the biggest thing is bringing that community together, and celebrating community and helping each other. So even on the day, we've got celebrities, we've got business owners, we've got companies that come in, and our thing is connecting people that are like-minded, and not only get something, like not only have a fun day, but then further moving, if it's a professional world or whatever, just trying to make sure that everyone works together and moves forward on it all.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. Like just watching from afar, and
you have to come.
Yeah, oh man, next year I'm there. They'll have to get in the diary because it just looks outstanding.
Yeah,
but,
it's great fun.
Yeah. So we first met at the preliminary final, Penrith Panthers versus Melbourne Storm, and then we had one or two beverages after after the grand final win. Yeah, well, that's funny. It's funny you say that because after we met, I went home and I was like, Mick Fanning said he's going to come on the podcast. But he had a few beers, so I'm not sure if you remember. But here's the thing, right? When I mentioned that, a few people have gone, what do you mean he's a Penrith fan? He's a surfer from up on the Gold Coast. What do you mean he's a Penrith fan? You were born in Penrith, right?
I was born in Penrith.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moved away when I was was born in St Mary's.
Yep.
The Pean Hospital,
Yep.
and
where a lot of the Penrith boys are born.
Yeah.
They haven't played at St Mary's, so
yeah. We moved out. I think I was like 4 or something.
Yeah.
And then sort of, I was pretty young at the time, so I didn't really have a team.
No.
My brothers, one brother went for Manly, another brother went for Tigers, and Eels. But yeah, it's sort of when I became a fan, it was when Penrith played Canberra in back-to-back grand finals. I was in the snow, and everyone was a Canberra Raiders fan. I was like, no way I'm going for them. And so I started going for Penrith then. And since then, it was up and down. It was like the first or last, really.
Yeah.
And then when I almost, because the Titans came into the competition, I almost defected, and
they'd have been looking for some celebrity fans.
Yeah,
they'd have been looking for #1 ticket holders. You'd have
been and my other friend Matt Elliott became the coach of Penrith, and he's like, if you leave me, I will bash you. And I'm like, all right, I'm staying. And then so I've been really sort of an avid fan for a long time now.
Yeah. How many top line surfers have come from Penrith?
Do you know what? There's been a few.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 or 4 that have made the world tour. Yeah. Matt Wilkinson, who was really close to winning a world title. He's from there. The O'Rafferty brothers now live in Port Macquarie. They made tour, and so there's been a few.
Yeah.
It's not that uncommon.
It's not the first sport you think of, is it? In Penrith, but yeah. So you obviously did you actually start? I mean, I've read that your mum would used to pack you up in the car and get you out to the beach. When did you actually start getting in the water and finding it that this is your place?
Yeah. So when we moved from Penrith, we moved to Coffs Harbour, and my elder brothers just fell in love with surfing. Yeah. And so, being the youngest of 5, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing because I didn't have a choice. Yeah. And so I started getting into the water then. It was pretty funny. Like my eldest brother, Pete, he just took me out, and I didn't know how to swim. Right. And he's just like, all right, make your way in. And I was like, okay. I was only like 4 or 5 at the time, and he's just like, send me on my way. But they were really amazing memories in Coffs Harbour surfing with my brothers. And then we moved back down to Campbelltown, and my brother Ed, he was just so hooked on surfing. Like he just could not get it out of his brain. And so he would jump on the train as a 13-year-old and either go Manly or Wollongong, and every weekend. So that was sort of, the introduction to it all. But then we moved to Ballina after Campbelltown, and it still wasn't my first love.
Yeah. What was?
Soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer and cricket.
Yeah.
And long distance running, and surfing was sort of just something I did when doing one of those sports. And then when we moved to the Gold Coast, I went to sign up for Palm Beach Soccer Club.
Yep.
And we went the wrong day. There was no one there. And so I jumped back in the car, head down, and my mum drove us down to D-Bar, and my brother Sean was meeting up with the guys from Quicksilver to potentially get sponsored. And and yeah, I just went surfing with him. And as I came in, they were like, "Do you want to get sponsored too?" I was like, yeah. And that was it. I never went back to soccer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because that strikes me as a bit of a fairy tale story. Like, you walk in behind your brother, who was a known surfer at this point, like obviously Quicksilver were meeting them, but they didn't know. Did they know you? Or?
No.
So how does that play? Like, when you say, "Do you want to be sponsored?" Like, what? How did that come about, really?
Yeah, it was funny. I came in on the beach, and I was just surfing. Like, I just went surfing.
And how old at this point?
I was 12.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I went surfing, came in on the beach, and I remember vividly, guy Denny DeCino and Scott Peacock, the guys who were running Quicksilver up here on the Gold Coast, they walked up to me and they're like, "Hey, we're from Quicksilver." And I was like, "Oh, you're looking for my brother?" Like, as if they knew who I was and knew who my brother was. And they're like, "What? That's your brother?" And then they're like, "Cool, let's sponsor you too." My brother wasn't too impressed, but he was like, "Oh, that's meant to be mine." But I was so stoked. Like, growing up with not a lot of money, we used to cut labels like Quicksilver, Billabong off old clothes and sew them onto, cheaper clothes. And now I'm getting free Quicksilver clothes and wetsuits. It was like, it was like Christmas all came at once.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know much about the surfing world, but my guess is that they're not just going to be doling that stuff out for the sake of it. So presumably you had some skills and some talent at that point at 12, even though it wasn't your first love.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd done competitions and stuff like that. And in my division, I was always, in the finals or whatever. But it just wasn't my first love. It wasn't something like growing up in Ballarat at that age. The waves are always bigger and, intimidating. And so it was just, I didn't really just fall deeply in love with it. And then when we moved to the Gold Coast, everything was just easier.
Right.
Waves were easier. The crowds were easier, even though people probably say they're not. But
do you mean like the amount of people on the beach, you mean, or in the water?
Just in the water, trying to navigate waves. And
the culture, you mean, as well?
Yeah, everyone was just, it wasn't like just south of the border. It just seemed a little bit more raw, where here was sort of a little bit more fluffy. And so it was, it was a good introduction, to be honest.
Yeah. So, okay. So it wasn't your first love still, you weren't falling in love with it, but you're obviously good. I'm wondering at what point that presumably that sort of desire for the sport grew, or the love for it grew. Can you recall a specific thing, or is it just a case of you just kept doing more and more and more of it?
Yeah. As I said, getting sponsored was one thing, and then surfing with kids my own age a lot more, and then getting inspired by two guys that are my own age that were so good, like Dean Morrison and Joel Parkinson. Like, those two guys were so far ahead of me, and they were destined to be pro surfers. Right. Like, they had nothing else in their books that they were going to go. And I was like, I just follow these guys. And so, I was always just trying to, how do I beat these guys? Because growing up being the youngest, I was so competitive, like so competitive, and I was not scared to keep training and training and training. And so, I just wanted to beat these guys so bad, and the more drive that I had there, I was learning more and just we got to a point where we'll just start leapfrogging each other, you know, from the age of 12, you know, through to 18, 19. And the next minute we're like, it all just happened so fast. Next minute we're winning world tour events and, you know, on tour. And it's like, whoa, what is happening here? So, but yeah, the love of it, just learning, I think. And just, and you know, finding my own circle of friends within that, within that world where, I didn't have that core nucleus of kids that age in Ballina.
So you said that, you know, for the likes of Joel Parkinson, like there was nothing else in his book. Like he was just destined for that from whenever you met him, you're like, okay, this kid's going there. When did you know that it was where you were heading? So I don't mean like, when did you think, oh yeah, maybe, but when did you actually go, oh no, actually, this is my thing?
Yeah. I was probably about, I think I must have been like 14, 15. Quicksilver were doing a movie and they asked me to be a part of it. And I was like, yeah, cool. And then,
of course,
so whatever you need, like, just
do I have to pay?
Exactly. And then I got invited to Bells Beach for the first ever time, and I was with the Quicksilver team manager, the late Andrew Murphy, and then another guy, Will Lewis, both, you know, on the Quicksilver team, and I got to hang out with, you know, went to dinner with Kelly Slater, Jake Patterson, Danny Wills, like all these incredible surfers. Matt Hoy won the contest. I got to watch Occy win the skins the same year, and I was like, this is wild. Like, is this what a pro surfer is? And that was it. That was like, all right, I'm doing this sport because I'm so into it. And then from that trip, things just started to fall into place. I got a phone call a week or two later from Rip Curl, and they're like, oh, we want to offer you this amount of money. And I was like, is this a prank call? Like, just tripping out. And I was like, you might want to call back when my mum's home, like, because, you know, I got to know if this is real. And then sure enough, I was in a bidding war between Quicksilver and Rip Curl. And from then on, it was just, nothing else took over my life. It was like, even school, like I was pretty good at going to school, like a lot better than Dean and Joel. Like they never went. But once I started, you know, I was making as much as the teachers at 16, and they're like, you got to come to school. I'm like, well, why? I'm making money here and making a career. And they're like, no, you can't make a career from surfing. And I was like, oh, I'll show you.
Pretty sure you can.
So that was pretty much the direction I went on. But just adamant to go to school and just learn enough that if things didn't go right, I had something to fall back on.
And so at 15 or 16, were you as rational about that as you're sounding right now? Or so, you know, was it part of, I mean, it sounds like it's part of plan B, you know, like if surfing doesn't come out, I've got a plan B, but you know, the audience of this podcast is, you know, emerging athletes, coaches, parents of them. I often try and frame that as part of plan A, because at sometime or other, you're not going to be a professional surfer, you know.
For sure. And, you know, you think about it, it's like the 1% in the world, you know, make it to the elite level. And well, it was sort of more my family that were like, you've got to go to school. Like my brother Sean, who was just that 3 years older than me, if I was 1 minute past missing the bus, he was on the phone to my mum. He's not going to school. Put him on. Why aren't you going to school today? Well, the waves are good. And, you know, and so my brothers made me really accountable, and so did my mum. And my mum was very realistic, as was my dad, because they're migrants from Ireland and England, so they didn't know about surfing either.
No.
And so, yeah, it was. They were like, "You've got to make sure you've got a career path," and I kept, trying to tip into, what I was going to do at school, and just surfing just kept taking over.
And when you talk about a career path, I'm fascinated by this, to compare. Maybe now's a good time to look at it like the pathway. In elite sport, we talk about the pathways, coming through. My understanding is right now, the pathway to become a professional surfer is quite clear. There's a high performance center, there's programs, there's coaches. Whereas I'm guessing when you were 15, 16, the pathway was probably like, it would be hard for someone to show like the stepping stones or not. Was it?
It was, to be honest, the tours for younger kids back then was probably better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Obviously you had your regional, your state, Australian titles. That was, both out of school and in school. So that was one thing that you could really, figure out if you were good enough or whatever. But then there was what they had. It was the Billabong Junior Series, or the Australian Junior Series, and it was up there as like one of the greatest tours because you could enter these. It was 21 and under, and it really groomed so many incredible surfers to learn how to travel, compete, and learn how to be a professional surfer before they got thrust out into the main part of the world. So that was, doing those tours, that Junior Series tour was really good. But like, to sort of put it bluntly, talking about leapfrogging my mates, by the time we were 16, we're competing against people that are 21. We're making finals and we're going close to winning events. And, by the time we were 18, the three of us were competing on winning the Junior Series and stuff like that. And so it projected really, really fast for us. But now the pathways, it's probably, obviously we've got the training camps, and obviously now that the Olympics are in, the government sort of starts putting money, and they're like, all right, how do we win gold medals? And so it's a little bit different. But they've got the structure of what is meant to be done. But I think I preferred it the old days where and it was a lot less coaching. Like you'd go and see a coach every now and then, but it wasn't like kids these days. They coach 7 days a week. And it's sort of, I don't know, I feel like they're losing that rawness, which sort of I like. So,
and I was interested in that because the culture side of surfing, and I'm thinking about other sort of you skateboarding and BMXing and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm interested in what you lose when you. I'm careful of the words I use, but it's almost like we sanitize the process and how you earn your stripes, or
I think in a way, like when I was a kid, if I said the wrong thing, even slightly the wrong thing, I'd get buried in the sand or tied to a pole. Like
not that we're condoning such things.
But it taught me respect my elders. It taught me to be careful of what you say. And I was a smart ass too. So, I needed that. But it was really good because then if anything went wrong, then these older guys, they had my back. And still to this day, that community that we've built was, it's a big part of my life. And it's something that I really cherish where, you sort of, back then mum and dad would just drop us off at the beach and here's $2.50 and feed yourself.
Yeah.
And that was it. Now we've got people going down and parents are filming them 24/7. Like, and so they're just, I don't know, they're guarded in a way. I'd love to tie up a couple of kids. No, I'm joking.
But when you had a throwaway line about the tours, like learning to travel, learning what it's like. Because, if we think the first time you went to Bells and you're going, wow, this is what a pro surfer looks like. Was that what a pro surfer, so your first thing, like that, you're hanging out with Kelly Slater, you're having dinner with, the world's best. How representative was that one experience at Bells as a 15-year-old to what it's actually like to be a professional surfer, learning, the travel side of it, the training, the ups, the downs, and everything that comes with actually, from it being something, as a 15-year-old kid, it's still very much pastime. Yeah, you gain some money, but it's to being the 25-year-old, for argument's sake, who's just in the mix, just, day in, day out kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a big eye opener for sure. Like seeing the level, that was probably the biggest thing, is just seeing the level and how consistent people were. That was probably the major thing for me, just being there. And it probably started like even the mental side of things, like just watching people. Like I was lucky enough to be like this close to watching people getting ready for their heats and stuff like that, and seeing how they'll prepare and stuff like that. And so I actually, being there, I went home and just writ this list of goals.
Yeah. Like
I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, all right, these are my goals that I wanted to get to that level. I want to be on that same level as those guys. And, it started off as like, I want to win the regional titles. I want to win this. I want to win a junior series, a qualifying series event, and then obviously get to the world tour. And I stuck that to my wall. Yeah. And it was crazy. Like still to this day, I can still picture that in my head of like where I wanted to get to. And, but yeah, without having that experience with them, I probably wouldn't have taken it as seriously. And because I probably wouldn't have seen how much fun was involved.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was so cool. Like, what are we going to do today? Oh, you're just going to go surf and film all day. I was like, cool. And then come in and Quicksilver pay for your lunch and dinner and stuff. Like, yes, this is the best.
And your teacher saying, you can't make a life out of this.
Yeah.
Your list of goals there, they all sounded somewhat outcome based. I want to win this, I want to make this, I want to do this. But I've heard you speak previously on Michael Gervais' podcast around the tension you had, or not tension, but the way you thought about being the best versus your best. Was that always the case, or as you've alluded to before, actually it started out just wanting to beat your brothers, then it was beat this, blah blah blah. When did you, or did you ever sort of make that transition from, okay, it is about outcome, sport is about winning, but it's not all about winning necessarily. When did you start thinking about being your best?
It was probably like obviously when you're a kid, you just want to win everything.
Yep.
Like you think that is the process, and that's, how do I win? How do I win? And it was probably the goal, even up until it's probably 2009 when I met Mike. Really, that was a big thing for me where I shifted a lot.
Yeah.
I went from, I was just performance based. Like I had to just lock in, and that was the only thing that ruled my world. And then like in 2007, winning a world title, but I burnt myself out so bad. Okay. In 2008, I was not there. I just put this pressure on myself. I also just was trying to take shortcuts, trying to figure out shortcuts in the way, and didn't didn't enjoy the process of it. And so that was a big thing. And then coming in 2009, I felt like my surfing was best as ever been, but I wasn't getting the results. I wasn't there mentally. I wasn't there making the right decisions. I wasn't doing the process the way that it should have been done. And yeah, got talking to Mike a fair bit about it, and that was when we first connected. You know, the first thing that we did, it was like, you know, talking about all the things that when things did go right, like obviously visualization was good for me, preparation was good for me, and just believing when I've done those things, that was when I had that self-confidence. So he's like, all right, well, let's make those things a day in, day out sort of process. And from that, I went on to, like, just from just that first initial meeting, I got second in one event, won the next, had a bit of a shocker in the one after, but then won the third one, ended up winning the world title from coming from the furthest back that anyone has ever done. And it was just by just believing in the processes, but applying myself in the processes. And so I still had a bit to learn after that. Yeah. But in 2012, like 2011, I had my worst year I've ever had. I was on the verge of quitting. I was just done. And so in 2012, I made a really conscious decision. I don't care if I win or lose, but I have to make sure that I do the processes right and enjoy that process to getting to the heat. Yeah. And it was all about my performance within me. I didn't care about judges or winning or whatever. And it flipped a huge switch in how much I enjoyed it. Yeah. And it also flipped a huge switch in how consistent I was. From that year on, I didn't fall outside the top 3 for the next sort of 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So, but I always just built around the performance and the process of it all within me. Yeah. And that would go, I'm not just talking in the water, I'm talking in the gym. Yeah. Like everything was as intense as if I was in a heat. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. Yeah. Yeah.
You're making the abnormal kind of normal, right? So you're not just waiting till you're in the water to have that attention to detail or that diligence or being all in or however you want to think about it. But that was you every day, everywhere. Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty much. But I'd block it into like, I'm going to training. Yeah. And I'll give 100%. Yeah. Once I'm out of training, I switch off. Yeah. And try and figure out, we're not thinking about surfing. We're not thinking about this or that. It's just, you got to be wherever you are. Yeah. And so I've started finding a really good balance. What I've felt was a really good balance in my life. There's never a perfect balance, but I felt like I could switch on and off and be in a room rather than be 100% in the water and thinking about that. And yeah, just sort of just change me personally, I think, with how I did life.
Yeah. When you say switch up, what did you have? Because this is almost part of going back to that plan A part of thing, like having something else other than your sport doesn't actually detract from your sport. It can actually help you enhance your abilities. So what else did you have going on there, or was it just being with different people, or
I think I sort of had different people in my corner. I brought my longtime surf coach, who I met when I was like 12. He was our coach at school and stuff like that. And I brought Phil McNamara. Brought Phil on full time.
Yeah.
And so he did. I have so much trust in Phil that he would do a lot of the thinking, and so I'd go to the beach and I'd just be super fresh, and he was like, "Oh, I got this, and this," and it was magical. Like I just felt like I was a lot freer. And then had a full time trainer in Baldwin, and those two would connect, and they would be making up the plan, and then I would be the last to find out exactly what we'd be doing. And if there was something in there, I'd say, I'd question, why are we doing this? And they'll be like, oh, for this, that, and the other. I'm like, all right, well, I don't think we should do it that way. I'll try it, but then let's tweak it. And so we had a really good team where we would just be, just bouncing off each other and learning from each other. And I think that was something that, helping, not only helping us three, but then we started being able, like, all right, well, we can teach other people this. We can teach younger kids how to, adapt themselves and, fall into the process of it all. And, it started in surfing, and then started talking to different athletes and stuff like that. And nothing monetized or anything like that. It was more just, that was another way for us to learn as well. So seeing how other athletes perform. And so, there was some really fun sort of learning experiences, but then I was starting to get a lot heavier into going on surf trips and building myself as a brand as well. So there was a few different things in the background.
Yeah. If we just go back a little bit, so you spoke like the year after winning the first world title, your words are you burnt out. I think people listening have different definitions of what that means. When you say you were burnt out, how did that actually manifest? How did you feel, and what do you put it down to?
In 2007, like as I said just before, I wasn't in the room. Like we'd be sitting here, and I'm at the beach, like just thinking, oh, how can I change that? How can I change that? And I did that in my relationships. I did that in, just every part of my life was just being 1-2 steps ahead of everyone and making sure, couldn't even go and have a beer with my mates because I was so just one track mind on, I got to win this world title.
Again.
That was my first one.
So this is the year that you won it, you burnt out.
Yeah. So in 2007, and I got to the end of it, and I distinctly remember having this conversation with my best mate, and he said, "So you're going to come back to the room now?" And it smashed me. I was like, I thought, winning world titles is what my mates wanted, or my family wanted, and all this, and he's like, "Man, I don't care if you win or lose or whatever. I just want me mate." And I was like, got it.
Yeah.
And so that really, really hurt me personally, that I was hurting my friends. I was hurting my relationships and all that kind of stuff. And so in 2008, I sort of went the other way.
Right.
I overcompensated.
Right.
But also too, I just felt like every time I started thinking about surfing, or I started thinking about performance and stuff like that, I'd find a distraction. And that's how I feel like I was burnt out, because I didn't enjoy what I was didn't enjoy the process of it all, or didn't enjoy the actual learning of it all.
Yeah.
I sort of felt like I need to concentrate over here more, and so I was sort of compensating elsewhere and didn't have the energy to surf. So,
to what extent did you get any satisfaction from winning the world title that year then? Or happiness, let me use that word because that's a bit more order. But yeah, how happy did it make you to win the world title and achieve the goal that you'd had since you got
it? Like I think about it now, and I still think of that very moment, and it still brings me joy.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But I realized that just because you win a world title doesn't mean you're invincible, or it doesn't change who you're meant to be and stuff like that. And the next day, life goes on. You know, and you know we all put this idea in our heads of, okay, we've got, if I win this, it's going to make me superhuman, or it's going to erase all my problems in life. And it's so far from the truth. It's like, if anything, it creates more problems because you're now in the spotlight, or you're now meant to be a role model, or all these different things. So, but like, to answer your question, I'm very proud of what I did. Because, you know, the people I was competing against, and the way that I implied myself, and just sort of felt like in the surfing world, I felt like I had changed the game a little bit in a way, in being an actual athlete rather than just a surfer.
I've heard that about you. That, you know, I mean, your phrase there, changed the game, because I think I'm right in saying you did bring a more deliberate approach to the training side. Was that post an injury? Had you had an injury that sort of prompted that?
I did, yeah. In 2004, I ripped my hamstring off the bone. And
was that surfing?
Surfing, yeah.
Wow.
And it was sort of, at the time, it was like so devastating. Like, you know, went pretty deep and dark. And then, but it, you know, they say that all injuries or whatever happen for a reason. And once I got through it all, I was like, okay, this is the reason why it happened, because I needed to take a break and go back and appreciate all the things that had happened to get me to this point. But then from there, I need to learn about my body, learn about my mind more, learn about applying myself in a better place and not taking everything that I have for granted. And so, yeah, look, I was one of those people, you know, if you won your first heat on tour, you'd have at least a day off. So it was like, you win your heat, yes, I'm on the beers tonight, you know? And, and I, had so many times where I was like, you know, slightly hungover. I could have been so much better and easily won. And I just, lack of better words, fucked it. And that was a big guilty thing that sat on in my stomach for a while, especially while I was injured. And so
in the moment, probably not so much, but the injury was kind of like a bit of a reset type moment, was it?
Or, well, I sat and I watched this one heat, and I was like, I was just that little bit off. And I thought I got absolutely smashed in the heat. And then when I rewatched it, I was like, no, I'm just off a little bit here. I could have won. And I had this mad guilt because I knew 2 days before I was on the piss. So it was like, all right, we're not doing that again. And it was weird because, like, when I got back on tour, everyone's like, oh, you won your heat. Let's go have a beer. I'm like, no, I'm not having a beer until my job is done. And that's the end of the contest. I'll have a million then. Like,
you'll have earned that.
Yeah. But it was like, I want to do my work. I never want to feel that guilt again. And that's probably why I sort of, just changed my way, and people saw that I was doing well, and they sort of adapted to that too, and so like, oh, we've got to be better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so then, and I just wanted to touch on that other moment in time you said where you had your worst year. Was that 2011 you referenced? What was, were there any touch points there? Like, was there anything obvious happening there, or? Because you'd met Mike, you'd been doing your visualization stuff, you'd been doing your processes, is that right?
Yeah.
And
there was a sort of just, there's probably a few different things going on at the time. You know, at the time I was, yeah, I don't know. I think I probably just didn't believe in myself. And so I was sort of self-sabotaging in a way.
how so?
Just once again, not applying myself right. I wasn't happy in where I was within brands and stuff like that. You know, I had a direction that I wanted to go, and I wasn't getting the help that I wanted, and so I sort of just started just spiraling a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just I started getting injuries because I wasn't looking after myself properly, and yeah, just sort of a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
A few personal things here and there, and so yeah, but it all came down to me and applying myself to me.
Yeah.
And I was neglecting myself because, you know, maybe some outside things weren't going the way I wanted to do. So I was like, well, why do that? So I'll just, if I'm going to fuck up, I want to make sure it's me fucking up, you know?
Yeah.
So I sort of just self-sabotaging in that way.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a theory sometimes that where you see that happening, it's kind of what you said there. It's like you see it at kids at school, you know, like think school's not going right for whatever reason, so they just act up more because at least they've got control of that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So they've not got control of the, I don't know, I'm just, you know, the scores and tests or the way teachers are responding to them or whatever. No control of that stuff are going at home or whatever, but they can walk in and be however they want to be, and at least they've got control of that.
Exactly, yeah.
And then they've got this ready-made, well, I didn't care anyway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what was happening?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that was pretty much it. And yeah, at least I controlled my losses.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't didn't feel like, you know, if I did lose, I was like, well, I didn't care anyway, you know? And it was just this almost little brat in a way.
At that moment in time, did you genuinely not care, or were you bullshitting yourself?
I was totally bullshitting myself. Yeah. You know, I would have these deep, dark moments and I'd be like, hang on. And I'd try and pull myself out of it. But then someone would trigger me off again and I'd fall back into that, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and but then, yeah, it was at the end of that year, I you know, we had I had bulged discs in my neck, and you know, everything was just hurting, and I was like, well, all right, I'll go to this event because it's a rip curl event, but I'm not going to Hawaii. I'm just gonna stop surfing for a bit.
Yeah.
And I had a month out of the water, longest time I've ever, obviously other than injuries, and I took a month out of the water, locked my surfboards up, and I was like, all right, you want to see if you really love this or not?
Yeah.
And by the end of the month, I had been through every process in my own brain. I was like, you're an idiot. You're such a brat. Like, fucking grow up. And that was when I was like, all right, all the things that I don't like, that I thought I had no control over, I just changed them. And just went, all right, you're going to go in, you're going to change your things, you're going to give everything 100%, and then we'll see what happens. And if you don't like it at the end of the year, then you can quit.
Yeah.
But you never want to walk away with those what ifs. And you know, I found myself even through like 2012, there were moments where I self-sabotaged a little bit. But
what does self-sabotage look like for you, other than saying I don't care? Like, would it be having a few beers during a tournament, or?
No, I would never drink through a tournament, but it would just be more like, oh, I'll train tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Or you know what? This is actually really fun right now. I'm going to hang out that little bit more where I should be in bed, or you know, and so just little things like that.
Little marginal losses, almost like nothing major, but just little things,
just enough to say no. It was that's why I lost.
Yeah,
you know? And so it took me a good process to get through that, but yeah, I got through the end of that year, and I was like, it's on now. Yeah. I sort of just, you know, because it doesn't all just happen like that.
No,
you've still got to weed out, you know, even though you weed the garden, there's still weeds underneath that can pop through.
For sure. Yeah.
And so that was pretty much what 2012 was about, was just unweeding. And if I don't like that, it's gone.
Give me an example of something that, because you said all the things you didn't like that weren't in, or weren't in your control, you just changed. Just some tangibles.
You know, I sort of put a lot of the processes on actually traveling and touring on myself. You know, I'd try and do everything. I was trying to be my travel agent. I was trying to be my my fitness trainer. I was trying to be my coach. I was trying to do all these different things, and it was just burning me out. I needed help. I wasn't someone that would ask for help. And so I was like, that was the thing. I was like, I can't do all these things by myself. If I want to be at this elite level, I need help. And so that was, and just the other one was picking my points on when to maybe relax in one area, or, you know, or be really strict. And so, yeah, it was just a big learning thing for me. And as I said before, like in 2012, I brought on Phil McNamara as my coach, who traveled everywhere with me. And then Nam as my fitness coach. And so that just releasing those two things was so good. And, you know, Phil even took over as travel agent, where I need to know what I'm doing. But and then also my media manager, Ronnie Blakey, came on and was doing a lot more work, and sort of just created a team around it, where I didn't have to be everything. And it actually came out really good. And it's still to this day that I ended up having some of the best years of my life.
It's you mentioned a few times now this idea of, you know, you went to a bit of a dark place, and the first one, the injury was kind of injury imposed. Then you had your self-imposed exile from the water, and you said, you know, that was a process. I'm not necessarily in, what the process is whatever it was, but I'm wondering, was that a deliberate process, or was it a process that you just navigated on your own? Did you have other people kind of just having either formal or informal input into that, or was it just something you created and navigated yourself?
No, I definitely had help. You know, I had friends that would come in and check on me, and then trainers like I could really sort of talk to, and then they would put me in touch with different people that might work, you know, might be able to help me get through it. And it was just learning to be honest with the people that I trusted. That was a big thing. And so, but even though I had all this advice and I had all these people, there's it has to come from within to want to change. And it has to come, you know, you have to say, all right, we're going to do this, or I'm going to, you know, approach it like this, or just, and apply yourself to be better. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And, you know, we get in these dark places and it's always poor me, or this isn't going right, this one, you know, and then you look in the mirror and it's like that person in the mirror, you're creating all these things and you can't hide from that person in the mirror. So it's like, well, that person in the mirror just looking at me and go, well, fucking change it. You know, if you want to, if you're sad, change it. You know, there's, I was just having this conversation just the other day where I was in Africa one time and I saw these kids with pretty much rags on and they're just kicking around a Coke bottle and having so much fun playing soccer with a Coke bottle. And I'm just like, these kids have nothing. I've got everything in the world and I'm sad. These kids are having a ball. And so, yeah, that person in the mirror is just like, don't like it, change it. And that was, yeah, it's always, it's a scary thing to look in the mirror and have that person look back at you and, you know, cause you have to be honest with that person in the mirror. And yeah, having to change the things that I didn't want to change, or was scared to change, because you need courage too to listen to that person in the mirror. That was something that, yeah, that's still a big part of my process today.
Right.
Yeah.
What, checking in with the person in the mirror saying, did I show up today?
Yeah. Or are you okay?
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, as I said, it's scary as hell sometimes, but you know, if you're going to be honest with that person in the mirror, then you should be okay.
Let's talk a little bit more about some other process, because there's a lot of what you're saying here, right? Where it's, you know, there was a time when you wanted to, or you did have control of everything, you know, and you want to control like the things you don't like. Let's get rid of this. And in sport, obviously, it's one of the big cliches: control the controllables, right? But I'm thinking like, and it's something we do a lot with most of the sports I work in are either, you know, team-based, you know, field-based sports, or you know, a couple of individual sports. But in your sport, my guess is there's very little that's actually controllable in a way, because every wave is different, right? So at least when the boys are running onto the footy field, one, the field isn't moving.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the field other than the opposition that is out to get you. The weather is, yeah, it's going to be, but you're pretty much always going to play. So you, for example, might turn up for an event and not compete for 2 days or 3 days, and then you've got to go.
Yeah.
So you spoke about when you were 15 at Bell's being able to be up close and personal and see how people prepared for events. This is what I'm fascinated in, is how do people, because talent, we know, talent's talent, but our ability to access that talent in these moments that matter, that's, you know, it's up here. So yeah, I'm fascinated to understand how you, who have been best in the world, what was your processes around controlling the controllables, but then really getting yourself in the right mindset, headspace, whatever you want to frame it, to just go out there and bring it?
Yeah, I think for me, and I probably won a lot of heats by just doing this, was being prepared. You know, I'd wake up in the morning and act like the event was on. And if it wasn't on, then, you know, I could go about my day. And then this was one thing I learned, you know, with Mike and doing visualization and stuff like that, is that at some point of the day, I know I have to do some sort of work to get ready for tomorrow. And so I would, as I said, if the contest was on, it's easy. You're already going. But if it wasn't on, I could go and later in my career anyway, was I could go and, you know, I can go and throw the footy around at the beach, or I can go to the gym, or I can go and explore or something like that. But then every night I would come home. I'd make sure my equipment was right. I'd make sure that everything that I needed for the next day was prepared. Wetsuits, bags, boards. And then before I'd go to bed every night, I would stretch and do my meditation, do my visualization. And so I'd go to bed as if I have done work today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so I never had that guilty feeling of, oh, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. So just that doing that process each and every night, I woke up the next day and I was ready. And you know, some days you wake up and you're not right. But then, you know, it didn't matter how off or weird I would feel, I would have a routine, a preheat routine that would just click me into gear. And I'd done it so many times that it was really comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I could tell if I just needed to do an extra stretch here or an extra crunch here, and just I'd know exactly where my body was, and even to the time, like it was right on. And then so I knew if I could, you know, you're talking about controlling the controllables. That's all I could control. Yeah, making sure my equipment was right, my body was right, and my mind was right. And so once I hit the water, it's all just reactive and just trying to make the right decisions. But you can't make the right decisions out in the water if you're like, oh, I should have done that on the beach. Or I should have rode that board, or I should have, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. If you're thinking about that in the water, you've lost. And so that's why I'd have my processes, and control what I could control. But once you're in the water, you just try and do the best. And you know, if your body's right to perform when the wave comes, give it all. If it's not, then
So I'm interested with the idea of visualization then, because some people might really dial in visualization around execution of skills, whereas in a previous episode of the podcast, Anna Mears was talking about how she would use visualization to just really dial into the environment of an Olympic final, not so much the execution of skill, but just really trying to get the feeling, the smells, just to prepare as best she could for the environment in which she was going to compete. Curious to hear from you, like, when you talk about visualization, what was that process for you? What did it actually look like, and what were you visualizing?
It all depended on how connected I was with myself. You know, if I was in the middle of an event and it was, you know, everything was running smoothly, I didn't have to sit there for long. It was anywhere between 5 and 12 minutes. Right. And my visualization process would be, I would breathe through my body and just relax everything, make sure that, you know, muscles felt right or whatever. And just sort of just, you know, that was, you know, just checking in, self-check. And then from there, I would to just look at a few waves of where I'm meant to be surfing, I guess, you know, in that heat or whatever, and just feeling how my body would feel and how it would look, you know. And then sometimes I'd even, you know, get to the end of that and I would picture myself, you know, lifting the trophy or something like that. And it was very, very clear. And a lot of times when I got it right, what I pictured in my head actually happened, and it would feel really comfortable to me. But then if I had, I remember for the Pipe Masters, when I was going for a world title, I visualized myself going through my warm-up, getting my boards ready, walking down the beach, putting my leg rope on, smelling everything, as you said with Anna, and paddling out, feeling the wind on my face, hearing the crowd, everything, and seeing the waves come in, and doing a full on. I sat there like what would have been if I was doing it in, not in my brain, I would have been there for an hour.
Yeah, right.
But because I went through the process in my mind, it all just felt so comfortable when I actually went and did it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really powerful for me, because it just, once I start doing these steps and I'm like, oh, I've been here before.
Yeah.
And so I felt comfortable in taking that. And there was, it sort of eliminates some of the nerves.
Yeah.
I won't say eliminates all the nerves, but
No.
because, as you said, it's the ocean, you don't know what's going to happen. But it sort of just felt comfortable. And so, that would be around like an event. When I was away from an event, it would be, I would visualize my family. I would visualize, hanging out with friends, or just different things, or even just watch my thoughts. Like, just as if it sort of feels like I'm sitting there with my eyes closed and my thoughts, like, I almost sit back out of my body and just watch everything that's going on in my body, my brain and everything, like words and all kinds of crap, weird shit. And that was a good one, especially if I was in those places where I had doubts and stuff like that. I could just say, where is this doubt going? And, sometimes it's scary. It's just something Mike and I sort of talked about is, the thought train. And sometimes you'd start going down a thought, and if you weren't comfortable or confident enough to go through that thought, you just get off at a station and just let the train go, and you go back. And then other times you'd be like, all right, let's see where this goes. And so there was a whole bunch of different sort of things like that, where, some days I would get off the first stop at the train, and then others I would be on it until it just stopped in a field. Like, it was just,
How do you think of your relationship with pressure?
I love pressure. I love it. I think it's, it all depends on what pressure. I look at it as, I've done all this work and I've prepared myself to be 100% in these pressure moments. And I look at it as like, all right, well, if I can perform right now under the biggest spotlight, then the work that I've done, the processes that I've done, it's all worked. If it doesn't work out, I know I need to learn again. So I love that. Performing under pressure. I think it's one of my, out of all the competing side of things, that's probably the one thing I miss. Everything else I don't even care. But now I have to perform under pressure at home. In the kitchen.
Oh yeah, you'll have a few parenting pressure moments at some point, I'm sure. There'll be plenty of those coming, mate.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But look, I think the pressure side of it, that is, there's different pressures. I think pressure on yourself is something that's you can deal with, and you sort of learn how to navigate it. If it's outside pressure, you can't control that. So it's not really worth sort of worrying about it. But it does creep in. Like, I'm not saying it's never creeped in. It does creep in at times, especially if you aren't 100% confident in yourself. That's when it starts to creep in. And it does feel a little bit heavy, but if it's just self-pressure, it's such a good feeling just to blow it out of the park.
And be okay if you don't. Or even actually sit with I sometimes talk about, like when people are feeling low, it's kind of, after that, experience that, because what you've got is this opportunity to experience like the extremes of the human experience. You're not living in like this meh kind of, you know what I mean? Like, you actually, sport gives you, especially at the level, we're talking about here, you get to experience the highest of highs, but also, you know, some crushing lows as well.
Yeah.
But you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably something that probably needs to be taught more in sporting worlds. You know, as sports people, we know we get a result based, I guess, gauge of where we are every single week, and it's not just the coach, it's not just myself, it's every fan as well letting you know how you went.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so it's like, shit, like that right there's pressure. You know, because you don't want to feel that crap. You want to feel the elation of it all, and but it is something that I think it's something that when people leave sport, that's the biggest thing they miss, because you don't know where you are in the world. You're like, how do I gauge myself today? You know, I'm on a 10 or I'm on an 8, or, you know, I'm on a 1 or a 2. And I think that's sort of like, you know, when you see professional athletes when they've retired and they, you know, they just start spiraling out of control because they're chasing that feeling, and they don't know how to be okay with not being in that realm, and they almost lose their identity to that feeling. We'll
certainly round out our conversation about how you've navigated the transition from being, you know, in the arena to being in the kitchen. But I can't interview Mick Fanning without bringing up your old mate, the Shark. And I actually don't want to, because there's a caricature version of this where the knockabout Aussie punches the Shark on the nose. But I'm also wary of not bringing up shit, you know, for you. So I'm wondering if I'll just, here's what I've got. It's like what for a surfer who's, you know, like you said today, you know, you've already been in the water. You have to be in the water. And yet you've had an experience there which, you know, perhaps for many surfers, they have this, maybe they don't. But I'm wondering, what was it like? Sounds so glib. I'm curious how you managed to get back to the water when something like that happens, because I imagine it was a fair challenge.
Yes and no.
Yeah, go on.
It's so it was terrifying. You know, you've never felt so insecure or so insignificant in your life. And so like I've still got some PTSD where I'm like, if I hear a splash behind me, I'll jump.
Yeah, well.
Like, but you know, am I scared of sharks? Yeah. Will it turn me into a frozen mess? No. But I sort of look at it, how many times have you walked across the road and almost been hit by a car?
A few.
Yeah. Did it cripple you?
No. I'm still crossing roads.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is for me surfing.
Yeah.
I go out, I don't see a shark every single day.
No.
You know? And it was, I've probably put myself in sharks' ways a few too many times, but out of all the years, like I'm 43 now, and out of all the years and all the days that I've surfed, that's the only time I felt like I was ever in danger.
Yeah, well.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you sort of have to rationalize that and just go,
absolutely.
Well, you know, it's like crossing the road.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you change the shark into a car, then you're more than likely going to get hit by a car.
Oh, for sure.
So that's how I look at it.
Now, how long did it take you to look at it like that?
It's funny, like people ask, like I spent like 10 days out of the water, just because there was so much media going on, and I was just sort of like just hiding because I didn't want to be in the spotlight. No. I wanted to heal. And it's funny, my first surf back, there was a shark in the water. I saw a fin. Me and my mate, I was on the, I saw the fin. My mate was on the jet ski, and I was like, come here. And we jumped on the ski. I was like, just so I'm not seeing things, is that a fin? And sure enough, fin came through. And I was like, cool, we're good. Like, I could see it. I was okay. I was like, well, that's a big sort of healing process. And, you know, I was like, all right, I'm not going to just willy-nilly put myself in harm's way. Let's go in. Let's go to a different beach.
Right.
We went surfing again. And, you know, I kept having these moments like after that I kept seeing sharks. And I don't know if I was hyper observant or whatever. And I know I wasn't making up in my head because the guy next to me saw him too. So
this is okay. To lead on your car analogy. This is like when you buy a red car, or you see on the car, the red cars are at this.
Exactly. And so they just kept popping up, and I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I never felt in danger. It was just like, all right, they're there, and they're doing their thing, and so it took it. I think the attention that came with it was probably more scary for me than the actual getting back in the water and going surfing. But
because it was just so incessant.
Yeah, it's just something that it just was not great. But saying like in saying that though, after that first surf that I had, because I was filming with 60 Minutes, there was one shot where it's coming from behind and coming up as if I'm sitting there. That triggered me. That really triggered me. Like for the next 2 or 3 days, I had to really process and go through like a whole bunch of things. It's like, all right, that's what the shark looked like. And I started going through the tapes and I started like looking at it and trying to figure out exactly what happened. And once I did that, I was okay. And talking to some different friends, I got some friends in the armed forces, and you know, they're talking about, you know, when they see mines on the side of the road, or, you know, even still to this day now, they're not in the armed forces, they see little piles of dirt and they're like, oh shit, you know, they think or whatever. And so I still get those, but I know it's not going to cripple me. It's like, all right, I'm going to, that happened. Let's keep moving. Because if you stay on the road, you're going to get hit by a car. So
I think, you know, right at the start of when you're exploring that, you know, you've gone through a very deliberate process of let's analyze the evidence. I've surfed my whole life and this has happened once. You know, and I think so often people neglect to look for the evidence. They just believe, a bit like your thought train, you know, like they sort of get stuck on this thought train. It's always, you know, I'm never going to do this, it's blah blah blah, and it's like, whoa that train isn't necessarily the truth, you know. Exactly.
And you know, I was, as time went on, I started getting a lot more inquisitive about it, especially once I retired. And so I went down this path with some friends, some filmmakers, and we went and did a full doco, and I swam with some massive sharks, like, and had them like bumping into me. And
really?
shit.
Wow.
And I'm just like,
and that didn't trigger you?
No.
Wow.
No. But, and I like went through like the footage with like a, you know, a full shark diver, who, you know, she looks after sharks all the time. We went through it all, and she started just pointing out different movements and stuff in the sharks. And I was like, all right, I'm good. We've figured this out. So it's just it was an incident. It wasn't an accident. So,
cool. You retired from the sport a year or so after that incident. Is it around that? When did you know? I asked you right at the start, when did you know you were going to be a surfer? When did you know it was time to, I know you still surf, but when did you know it was time to leave the sport professionally?
I've got the exact moment. It was, so in 2016, like in 2015, I had that crazy year. You know, obviously the shark, I went through a divorce. I also lost my brother at the end of it. So I was exhausted. I was like mentally, emotionally, just just gone. So in 2016, I was like, all right, I'm gonna have half a year off, and so I did enough to qualify for the following year. And then once I did that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go and just explore the world and do all these different things. And I I was traveling around, and Parko's ringing me. He's like, you coming back next year or what? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, come on, just do one more year with me. Can you please do one more year with me? I was like, all right.
Twist me out.
Yeah. And so anyway, I
if he'd not called, or if it had been someone else, because I know you grew up with Joel, but let's say it was just some other, or if it was your sponsor, come on, Mick, we want you. Do you think you'd have been drawn back as readily? Or the fact it was Joel?
No, it was only because it was Joel.
Was it?
Yeah. Like my sponsors were incredible. They're like, if you want to go back, go back.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go back, we'll figure out another plan. It was fine. But because it was Joel, and I probably still had a few questions as well. Like
whether you'd left something out there.
Yeah. Am I done?
Yeah.
Am I not done? Yeah. And like in the back end of 2016, I did a lot of, inner searching where I was like going through and making sure that, just sort of just making sure I'm dealing with the things that had happened and everything. And sometimes I was by myself, sometimes I was with other people talking to them, but did a lot of internal thinking, and there was a couple of what ifs. And I did the first event and I was like, well, I don't know if this is right or not, or I didn't do great, but it felt really sort of forced. And then I was first. You asked for that one point.
Yeah.
I was first heat in Western Australia, and it's the most beautiful day. There's swell everywhere, and they kept postponing my heat, and I'm sitting there in the car park, and I'm like, oh, all right. And I'm just thinking of all the other places I could be right then and there.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, this is it. I'm done. And then I knew I was done before I even paddled out for that first heat.
Yeah.
And I just put the jersey on. I was like, I don't even know why I'm paddling out right now, but I'll go do it anyway. I remember the exact heat too. Like I had Kelly Slater in my heat, who I should have been frothing to surf against. Didn't care. Came in, lost, and everyone's like, man, is you okay? Like you just lost. I was like, give a shit. I was like, and I went on a bit of a party bender for a couple of days, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it was, once I made that decision, all that forcefulness and everything that sort of happened in those first two events, I was like, let's just make this fun. If you're gonna go out, just have a really fun year.
Yeah.
Do all the things that you wanted to do when you were probably too serious.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. And it was crazy how much more I enjoyed the tour, because I knew I was done. And then I also had a process where at each event I would tell one person in confidence, that's the last time I was there.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool just to see reactions, and then some people would be like, oh yeah, I know. But for me, I was like, that made that last year on tour with Parko a lot more fun.
Yeah. And where did you finish that last year?
Oh, I think rankings wise, probably I was in the teens.
Yeah.
Yeah. but I didn't care.
But you didn't care.
Did not care.
Yeah. But it wasn't because you didn't. Yeah, am I right? It's not because you didn't care about the sport anymore, though, or was it just that it was?
I just had more fun surfing, doing other adventures.
Yeah.
You know, there were definitely heats where, you know, I got to surf against John a few times, and he absolutely smoked me. But I felt like my performance was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I got to surf against Gabriel Medina a few times, and he smoked me. But I felt like my performance was pretty good. Like, you know, and I got to surf against Parker a few times where we hadn't surfed against each other in a long, long time. And, you know, instead of just being in the zone, and we were talking shit to each other and just, oh, it was so fun.
Dare I say, almost back to being 12, 13 years old, just.
Yeah. It was full circle.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, but then I knew how I could get into his head a little bit
better. Yeah. But to kind of go out on your terms, because it sounds like it was on your terms.
100% my terms. Yeah.
Which not many athletes get that, to be able to just call, you know, a lot. Again, I'm thinking in team sports, you just cut.
Yeah.
You know, you traded, this, that, and the other, you know, or injuries, you know, so so you've stepped out, and we started this conversation talking about, you know, the golf day. I'm curious, like, who is Mick Fanning now, and where is he? You know, what's it? You mentioned, you know, you'd loved having that process of learning, and what are you learning about now? And
I've got 2 kids. I learn every single minute of every day. So to answer your question, who am I now? I feel like I'm just a home dad.
Yeah.
And that my process is learning from my kids, being there for my kids and my wife, and just trying to be good father, husband, and friend.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing. But I still, like, you know, I'm still learning a lot about myself, you know, and the things that I like to do. And then the sort of, so that's me every day waking up is, you know, family first, friends. And then the professional side of it is, just trying to do what I can do to, I guess, not only better myself in that world, learn from different areas, but, you know, if it's mentoring kids, or if it's, you know, trying to help other people that are less fortunate, or even just, being introduced to people I never knew with the exciting stories. Like, that's the professional side.
Yeah.
At home, I'm just dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, my whole goal right now is just staying fit enough that I can take my kids on holidays and surf trips.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon you'd know some good spots. So they've got some good trips ahead of them, I'd imagine.
They got to behave. No, I'm joking.
No, they've got to behave. Mick, mate, thank you so much for joining us. I hope I hope we get to catch up at another grand final fairly soon. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for the therapy session.
Brother.
Cheers,
awesome.
Thank you.